Okay folks, this is your video tutorial on rotoscoping in Photoshop. We're going to work with the timeline layer, doing a timeline animation for the homework due on Monday. So the first thing I'll want to do is bring in one of my video layers. You can just drag it into Photoshop or open my folder's on the desktop. I'm going to open kicking.mov. It opens in its own window. You might have to choose timeline animation, but if your timeline palette is open, it probably will just populate your timeline with this video layer. And right now we have sound. We don't need sound for this. We're not going to export with sound. So here we have our timeline layer in position. You might just want to work within the window that opens when you open one of your whatever video file you choose. We don't have to move it into another window if we don't want to. Now, one of the problems that we had in class a lot was transforming the video layer was causing the video to cease playing, and I think I found a solution to that. I think the problem was that we were transforming it in such a way that it just turned the video layer into a flat layer, like an image layer, basically. Now, if you want to avoid that, you can actually turn it into a smart object, which you don't have to worry about what that is, but it does sort of protect the original layer. It's like a case around the layer that protects it from any destructive edits. So go to the Layers palette, which is distinct from the Timeline palette. Click on the layer. Make sure you're clicking on the layer. If you're not clicked on the layer, you can also just click on the layer in the timeline, and that is the same thing, actually. So once you have that selected, go into the layer menu, go into the Smart Object menu, and convert to Smart Object. When you do that, you should be able to do all your standard transformations. If I have the Move tool selected, I can just click on Show Transform Tools in the Tool Properties, and then these little handlebars will appear, and I can kind of drag things around all day long. Remember that in order to place the transformation or accept the transformation, you can either double-click on the image, go into another tool, and it'll ask you if you want to place, and you say place, and now this should ideally maintain the playthrough of the video. Next thing you're going to want to do for this is turn on your timeline shortcut keys, which will allow you to do, among other things, left and right arrow key on your keyboard to go through one frame at a time, and spacebar to preview the animation. I really wanted to turn off the audio on that. I'm not sure why that's still on. Oh, here we go. Anyway, I'm going to turn off the... Oh, here we are. Here's the audio. Turn that off. Remember that if you want to cut up your animation, you can click. Make sure you're selecting the right video layer you want to cut, and just click on the scissors. That'll cut the animation. So you want your timeline shortcut keys enabled. You also want to know that you can enable the onion skins. Onion skins will show you the frame before and the frame after superimposed on your current frame. We'll go through that in a minute. Once again, if you to begin making your rotoscoped animation, transform your underlying video file however you wish, and then go up to Layer, Video Layers, and create a new blank video layer. Now, often what will happen is your blank video layer is just going to go to the end of your current layer, and that's a pain in the butt because you actually want it to overlap your current layer. If that happens, I believe the easiest way to do it is to go over to your Layers palette. You see, it created this video group, and they're all in this overarching folder, and that's not what we want. We actually want this new blank layer outside. So I actually just dragged my new blank video layer on top of the other layer, and that actually, you can see on the timeline, it brought it into its own space on the layer. So now I can actually overlay this on top of the other layer. So now I can start wherever I want and start, tracing his spin kick. Once again, using the paintbrush tool. Whoops, that's not so much what I want. Whoa. Not at all what I want. Apparently this computer doesn't like my Wacom tablet. So I'm gonna draw with the mouse. Oh God. So there we go. I'm gonna draw with the mouse and do all my rotoscoping, which I'm not gonna bore you with. I'm just gonna rotoscope the one layer. Now you can add as many additional blank video layers as you want. Probably we want to keep it on 1 or 2 layers just for the sake of clarity, for the sake of organization. When we move into Flash, we'll start working with multiple layers. We'll have a number of moving parts simultaneously. On our stage, you can see now that I have 2 rotoscope layers. I've been drawing on my blank video layer. When you're ready, you can make the underlying layer disappear. I'm just going to do it by turning off the eyeball in the layers palette. And now that's off. I can, if I want a black background, I can create a new blank layer down here and just, once again I have the same trouble with it being in this layer group. So I'm just going to move it down, move this up, move it down, somehow, there we go, move that down. Where did it go? There you go. And if you're working with a still layer, you can actually drag it to whatever duration you want. Wherever your Photoshop knowledge falls short in this, just stick to the simple idea about creating your new blank video layer and then tracing over it. Now it's unresponsive. Okay, anyway. When I'm working with the rotoscoping, remember that you can turn on onion skin. You can see both your current layer and the layer before and after. So this will allow you to animate straight ahead or even pose to pose if you remember those terms. And you can see the before and after layers. Another little tip is onion skin settings adjusted in different ways can, especially the blending mode, can actually make the onion skins more or less helpful. See, they blend in different ways with the background, which isn't too visible there. Okay, so that's your rotoscoping process. Now, if you wanted to bring in some still images and animate them, you can do that too. I'm going to bring this apple in to the frame. I can either drag it, let's see, I'll drag it into the frame here. And everything, you know, you don't want it to be in your, let's see, did it go on its own video layer? Yeah, it did. So this apple is on its own video layer now. It's underneath the kickboxing video. But we can easily bring that above. There we go. It's sitting here. I can again adjust the duration just by dragging the endpoint. So now it exists through the whole timeline. I can transform it by going to the Move tool, turning on Show Transform Controls, and dragging this handlebar around all day long. Now the apple is at least pumpkin-sized. And if I want to drop it down for him to kick, I can take it to its start position at the beginning of the animation. If I want to animate position, I just take it to the start position. I click this stopwatch. Remember to click on this drop-down arrow that will expose the different animation properties that you can adjust. Transform is pretty handy, but just make sure you click the stopwatch to create a keyframe. Remember, keyframe is your important position. And we'll drop it in time for the kickboxer to kick the apple. So now I just put the timeline to the position I want and the motion, and I'll drag the apple into position. And as simple as that, bam. And so now I can do a second position of the apple flying off the screen in response to the kick. Bam. Now I can preview with spacebar. Bam. Okay, that looks pretty good. Isn't my soundtrack better than his? Okay. With transform, you can also, let's rotate it as well. And make sure, when you have these keyframes, really try to be aware that you're not creating a zillion different keyframes, because things can get pretty unpredictable. You can even choose a keyframe and then press the delete key if you get too many. Yeah, it looks like you can select multiple keyframes by dragging and dropping over a couple. If you want to just get rid of a bunch, you can get rid of all of them by clicking off the stopwatch. Once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my final keyframe. I'm going to have it actually rotate. Whoops, I don't want it to do that. I want it to rotate. When I have the transform controls selected, if I go onto one of the handlebars, it will scale it. If I hover slightly outside of the handlebar, the little cursor will change to a rotation cursor, and then I can rotate. You can also do these transforms in edit, transform, scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, or warp. And you should be able to affect all these changes. You see that? Now it's animating the rotation as well. You can also make it do something like fading into the scene to opacity keyframes. And now unfortunately, I adjust opacity right here in the layers palette. This is a lot to remember for you guys. And style. What is style? Style is the layer blending option. So I don't even have to animate that. Let's see. Blending style can be found by double-clicking. Oops. Well, the easier way. You can double-click on a layer that is not a smart layer, or you can go up once the layer is selected in the layer palette and click on the palette menu, go down to blending option, and there's a lot of little things you can adjust, like gradient overlay, like drop shadow is a popular choice, or outer glow. Let's start with a drop shadow. You can't really see it right now because actually the apple is not only off the screen, but it is also invisible. So we'll just go to a place in our timeline. Let's see. Oh, you see how it has that shadow now? Let's adjust the shadow again so you can see what it looks like. Okay. You can see, oh, look at that. See, there's a nice drop shadow there. There's a lot of different things you can do. An outer glow is a popular one for this magical apple, or for something like a magical apple. If we were to do something like a magical apple, this would be the thing to use to do it. So if I want to actually make that glow increase, like a little explosion when the kick lands, let's do that. Bam. Let's make it just pop here. So the outer glow is going to become different color and way more intense. Okay. Boom. And now it's going to fade by the end. Okay, there's a lot of cool things that I can do, these options. Bam. Remember my rotoscope layer, you know, the criteria here for this assignment are to use at least one video layer, some rotoscoping, and the rotoscoping should be some kind of commentary or addition or amplification, augmentation of the video. So think about like what kind of story you can tell through the original video and its commentary by means of rotoscoping. The inclusion of these still objects animated through this other method of using the keyframes, that is up to you how much you want to use those. Your animation should be about 10 frames. Oh, 10 seconds. One thing I've forgotten to mention is that you're going to need to also decrease your frame rate to give yourself a break so that you don't have to rotoscope a zillion frames. Okay, let's first decrease the time of the overall animation. Oops, that's not what I want. Let's first decrease the time of the overall animation, which is, where is it? Is that it? No, it's timeline settings. Show. Okay, we'll first convert the timeline frame rate. Let's go down to 10 frames per second. This will greatly decrease the amount of total frames we'll need to rotoscope. It'll be a little choppier, you might notice, but for our purposes, this is suitable. This is the right kind of frame rate for our purposes today. And then to change the entire length of the animation should be timeline frame rate, panel options. Seems to be moved around to a different place in each version of Photoshop. Move and trim. Okay, well, one way to do it without trimming anything is if you want to shorten the length of your entire animation, you can move these little handlebars, which actually designate the amount or the amount of the animation that you're going to export or that you're going to save when you export the animation. So this is really the easy way to do it after all. So pull this handlebar to where you want your end to be. You know, don't exceed 10 seconds by too much. And when you're ready, you'll want to export. Let's turn everything on. Everything is visible. Okay. You want to export by means of File, Export, Render Video. Now we want to actually export it as a QuickTime. Might as well export it as an animation high quality. And we want it to be the document size. Whatever the document size is, just go with that. Document frame rate is fine. And you know, we'll just do work area, which is what we designated by moving those handlebars. So just click on that. Don't do all frames because we don't want all frames. We want just the area that we've established as our export range. And then say render. But yeah, we don't want to save it as the same file name, so Ryan's Kicking Roto scope. And we'll do that, and it will render. I think that's everything that we've covered. Let's see where we've gone. Now, where on earth has it gone? Always try to pay attention to where the path is where you designated your render, otherwise you'll lose it. If you forgot to check where it's going to render your file to, just go back to Export, Render Video. Oh, and it's on the desktop. So here we are. Brian's kicking rotoscope. And here we are. Bam. There's my little bit of rotoscoping, not enough for the sake of this assignment, but it successfully exported. Thanks, guys.